Electric Guitar plc recently listed on London's AIM market with the ticker ELEG. The company is focused on building a world-class business to deliver the technology and data that marketers need to build meaningful consumer connections in a world where there are increasing concerns over personal privacy and protection of data. Chief Executive John Regan joins us today to tell us more. Good morning, John.
Morning, Alan. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Well, John, the issues around data privacy is something that affects each and every one of us. And of course, we're all aware of how ads can follow you around when you're browsing, and of course, how Alexa listens in too. Among all this, where does the commercial opportunity lie for electric guitar? And also, how does the company earn its money?
Well, if I was to tell you that there was an $800 billion global market behind that type of information, which is harvested and resold by companies in the shadows that you would have heard of, it's people like Facebook and Google and that type of business. You can see there is a commercial opportunity in that, but you wouldn't expect it as a normal consumer. The real opportunity lies, though, is where the real opportunity lies is in the fact that as consumers we are beginning to talk about that. What has happened as a result of that increasing awareness, or perhaps has caused it, is that there's been significant legislation which has been put in place. You may have heard of the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, which was put in by the Europeans, but which the UK still follows. The US has followed that. APAC is following it too. Australia is following it. So that GDPR, which was 2018, has set up a chain reaction where privacy legislation is coming in across the world. And that has meant that type of activity, Alexa listening, data being collected from your browser as you browse websites, that type of information is becoming harder to collect. And actually, the most significant thing, it should be the legislation which should have really made an impact. But the truth is, the most significant thing is the reaction of companies like Google and Facebook and Microsoft and Apple and various others to that legislation and to the growing consumer awareness. Because what they've all done is started putting what they call privacy measures in place to protect consumers. Now, I'm a little bit cynical about that because, for reasons I'll talk about in a second, that gives them a significant advantage in that $800 billion marketplace. But they are saying that they're beginning to block the access to that data. And the key one that people may have heard of is these things called cookies. So third-party cookies are these little devices that download onto your browser as you go to a website, and they track everything you do. And that information gets auctioned off to advertisers to work out what you're looking at and what you're interested in, and therefore to work out which adverts to send to you. That's the bit which is going away quite quickly, and that's the bit which Apple in their Safari browser and Firefox have started to block already. The big change is that Google, with their Chrome browser, are starting to block it too. And the Chrome browser is over 60% of the browsing market, so 60% of that data will be going away in the very near future. If you're an advertiser, that's a problem because at the moment, or in fact until very recently, because it's already started depreciating, until very recently, you were able to find out an awful lot about your consumers very cheaply. You could buy an advert, you could place an advert in someone's browser on a website for less than a penny, and you could find out all sorts of information about that person through the advertising process. Now, what's tending to happen is you can still buy that targeting, but the companies like Facebook and everything else are creating what they call walled gardens. They won't feed very much information back. They will provide a platform that tells you how the advertising campaigns are working, but they won't tell you who's really responding. And that means if you're an advertiser, you're in a situation where your supplier of that data knows a lot more about what's going on than you do. So from a commercial perspective, from the perspective of optimizing that advertising, you're at a significant disadvantage. The other thing you're, of course, worried about as an advertiser is that consumers will find out about your advertising practices. A few years ago, there was a company called Cambridge Analytica that got in trouble because the stuff that they did affected the election of Donald Trump in America, and they say also influenced the Brexit vote using that type of data. So there's a big fear that this is a bit like Russian roulette. One of these big brands who is following these practices could get called out for what they're doing as well. So if you are a chief marketing officer, a CMO, you're feeling a bit nervous about this. This is a bit like Russian roulette. So because of those two things, what we're seeing is a big disruption in the advertising marketplace, because advertisers are saying, well, actually, we don't want to rely on these third parties to harvest this data in the shadows. We would much rather be more transparent. And by being more transparent, what they're talking about there is, as you come onto their website, they want to engage you there and talk to you about things there and learn about things there and change things. They talk about a value exchange for your data. So a really good historical example of a value exchange is, if you go to a tailor and you let the tailor take your measurements, the value is they're going to give you some fitted clothing as a result of that. So that's the type of value exchange they're talking about. Tell us your shoe size, tell us about why you're on this website, tell us a bit about you, so that we can give you a better experience, a more tailored product. We can deliver it to you in a way that you want it delivered to you. But the benefit to them, of course, is when you come back to that website again, they already know you, and they can do things to encourage you back to that website, whether that's a loyalty discount or a really good experience or targeting specific products of theirs onto you at the website. You just get a better experience, so you keep coming back. And then they've got a bit of an advantage over Facebook and Google and everything else, because they're not so dependent on them for that lifeblood flow of advertisers or advertising, which drives people onto their website. So that's where they're shifting. And I think, the other comment I always like to make on this is, if that tailor experience, which I just described to you, that's called first party data. It's a first party relationship. Yeah. And the third party cookie equivalent of that would be if the tailor sent someone round to your house and went through your cupboards and got your measurements that way, and then turned up and sold you a fitted suit. That has been the lifeblood until now. So our commercial experience is this: as that change happens, and we know it's happening, surveys are telling us that those chief marketing officers are telling 60% of them have already said that first party data is now their priority this year. I think the other 40% just haven't really smelled the coffee, to be honest, because everyone's got to change. So in that disruption, there's a lack of expertise. There's a gap there for first party data provision. So Electric Guitar has been created to build a business that scales really rapidly to fill that gap. And we know that, what we need to do that, we need access to the right technology, the right expertise, the right verticals, the right territories. So that's the idea behind the public company, is to be able to raise the funding really rapidly, to acquire those businesses, bring them all together, and build that scaled first party data business, which is really, which is really fulfilling the demand that this massive disruption is driving. And I think one thing that I can't emphasize enough, it's happening this year. The conversations, it's almost like everyone's had their head in the sand and suddenly everyone is really concerned about it. So this year is a real land grab opportunity for us. So that's why we're driving forward really aggressively.
Okay, I understand completely, and that's a very, very detailed description of the commercial opportunity there for Electric Guitar. And of course, I think you described that perfectly. Of course, your mantra is people first data. Are there any how does that work practically for a company today? So a company wants to ascribe to people first data. How does that work in practical terms?
Well, really, what lies behind that mantra is a change in thinking if you are a digital marketer, because historically, collecting data and targeting people was a compliance problem. The concern was, are we in breach of data protection legislation? And quite frankly, in many cases, the brief to the compliance team was, what's the bare minimum we can get away with to make sure that we are compliant if challenged? And sometimes I think people crossed that line and relied on not getting called out, quite frankly. What we are saying, and what the market is saying, what the demand is to say, well, take a step back. Think about the amount of money which is being invested in creating trust and brand values and a brand conversation, and think about that, and think about the people which are involved in that conversation, and think about putting the people first as opposed to the data first. Think about the data experience of those people as opposed to just how much you can scrape from people as a product. So it's a shift away from data towards people, and thinking of the people first. Are we delivering value for their data? Are we delivering the right experience? Are we dealing with them in the way that they would like to be dealt with?
Understand. So part of the IPO process a few months ago involved the acquisition of 3 Radical Limited. Of course, it's software as a service platform, 3 Radical Voco. What exactly does the Voco platform enable?
Well, what it does, it's one of those things, it's a bit like a swan swimming over water. On the face of it, it's very straightforward, and the things which happen in the background are quite complex. What it does is creates an opportunity for advertisers to draw people into a conversation on their website or in their advertising campaigns. And some of those opportunities are very, very simple. It potentially it's an offer to scratch a scratch card and win a 20% discount or something like that. But what it does is draws you into a conversation. It asks you questions. First of all, in order to receive the discount voucher, you need to give your email address, of course, and it explains that email address will also be used for marketing. But then also it says, well, why are you here? Tell us a little bit more about yourself. And over a period of time, as people keep returning to these experiences, then it builds up a detailed picture of that person, and then is able to adapt what it does in real time. So if it's learned something about you, the next time you're back there, it will deliver something appropriate. So for example, if you've said that you're on a particular website because you're looking for socks and not shoes, well, the next time you're back, it will remember that and talk to you about socks and not shoes. It's much more nuanced than that. Of course, I'm being overly simplistic from the point of view of the description. Where it's very, very valuable is that the back end of that, the legs of the swan, if you like, feed directly into our clients' existing data systems, so that if it recognizes someone who is an important customer in the first place, or a customer or someone who's just visiting who they're very keen to convert, then again, it can immediately draw from the information already in the system and change what happens next, as well as feed stuff back into the system, and that can create an instant response as well. So it may be that it immediately sends an email to that valuable customer and says, thanks for coming and joining in and giving us a bit more information. So it's that to and fro, which is hugely valuable, which is fairly unique in the marketplace.
I understand. Well, of course, following on from that, last week you announced 3 Radical had agreed a strategic collaboration with Digital Alchemy in terms of helping to drive client acquisition and engagement. In your strategy outline on the website, you also discuss acquiring businesses, scaling up by investing into tech and talent, and of course, networking. Can you firstly tell us about this new collaboration with Digital Alchemy, and also what else you're aiming to achieve this year?
Yeah, I mean, Digital Alchemy, they provide the infrastructure, the nuts and bolts that describe what I just talked to you about. So they help provide and implement the infrastructure which drives those customer data processes. Now, the reason that that's important for 3 Radical is because at the moment, of course, we're talking about something which bolts onto the end of that. But by partnering with 3 Radical, by partnering with Digital Alchemy, 3 Radical can have the conversation with customers at a much earlier stage when they're developing those processes, which means that actually what we're doing is much, much more integrated and much more involved in the strategy, much more involved in the type of optimization that Digital Alchemy are providing for their clients. What that means to us in opportunity terms is it means that we're going to be involved in multiple campaigns over a long period of time. We're a much more strategic element rather than something which, sometimes is just bolted on the end, quite honestly. So that changes things. The other thing which is really valuable to us about Digital Alchemy, they're based in Singapore, and they have offices throughout the APAC region, and they are a very significant provider in that area. So it gives us access to a lot more clients, and a different type of client as well, and a different type of conversation. So those are really valuable things to have. And an added bonus, actually, to be honest, was that one of the most senior people in Digital Alchemy in Singapore previously worked for 3 Radical. So he understands the product really, really well. So we don't have to educate our reseller there. He's already very well educated in that. So that's also really, really helpful for us on that. You also asked about, well, what more can we expect in that area? One of the big opportunity we saw in 3 Radical is that they are a really well developed tech business, but they hadn't got to the stage of really aggressively selling and marketing their product. And there are certain elements of it which weren't commercialized, which I'll come on to in a second, actually. So the opportunity there is to help scale up that sales and marketing. We're investing heavily in an internal sales team to do that. And also changing the way in which we present the product. At the moment, it's presented very technically, and what we're doing is productizing that so that people can understand it quickly, and so that it's very, very scalable, and we can just deploy over and over again the same instance of the same product. So we're doing that, but also we're partnering with other businesses where we see that opportunity to, in effect, win a new sales team, win some products that we sit nicely alongside, and gain access to knowledge and information and sales in that way as well. So on the partnership side, what you can expect is more partnerships coming along. There are some interesting conversations there. As part of the electric guitar strategy, of course, this is a buy and build business. So we have built up a very extensive pipeline of other businesses that we're having conversations with. 3 Radical was our first acquisition. It was an IPO and shift across to AIM. And so we were very, very cautious. We couldn't go too far in those conversations with other businesses, because what we didn't want to do was complicate the fundraise process for 3 Radical with other things that we would have to include in our prospectus. But now that we've done that, we're progressing those conversations quickly as well. So we're looking to more acquisitions in a rapid sequence over the next few years, actually. Now, there was also something else that, there was also something else that I was going to mention about 3 Radical, which was they also are sitting on a large amount of data, which is a result of deploying all of that technology across lots and lots of different websites. And they haven't done anything with that. So what we're currently doing is looking at that, because what we believe is that will be a very, very good basis for creating machine learning algorithms that predict how people will engage at a very, very early stage. So once those algorithms are created and we deploy them into the Voco platform, what our clients will be able to do is, as soon as someone hits the advertising, the website, or hits the 3 Radical experience at a very, very early stage, they'll be able to work out what the next best action is. And so we'll be able to really increase the extent to which people engage with that. That's really significant, because what we're seeing in the marketplace at the moment is lots of advertising businesses talking about AI and machine learning and that type of thing. But the challenge that they face is that they simply don't have the data to create that type of technology, because they've not kept it. Whereas 3 Radical has got that data, so we're really excited. We're not seeing any other competitors of 3 Radical at the moment with anything similar. So we're really excited to be able to develop that product and deploy it in the future.
Excellent. Well, John, you've already outlined the roadmap going forward, and fully appreciating, of course, you can't reveal stuff that isn't in the public domain. But what value inflection points should investors and shareholders be looking for in the coming weeks and months?
I think you've just said I can't say anything that's not in the public domain, so it's a tricky question to answer. But the value and inflection points all come from that strategy. We have a land grab opportunity. We have a market which is disrupted for reasons not just because of technology, but it really is reaching the point where marketers have got very limited options other than to be disrupted. So there's a real opportunity there. We have this really strong pipeline. So as the other acquisitions come along, clearly there will be inflection points at that point. And there are many, many tech businesses that we're seeing where they're not being aggressive in their marketing yet, because they've been focused on the tech and their developers, and there are opportunities there. So those are the things which are coming down the pipeline. It's future acquisitions, it's more aggressive sales and marketing, more partnerships like the one I've just talked about as well.
Excellent. Well, John, it's been great speaking with you, and we wish you every success in the execution of your growth plan. John Regan, Chief Executive of Electric Guitar PLC, many thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Alan.